Hello, friends. My name is Nayaswami Hriman, and it's time to ask a yogi. I had a letter from a young man in India, 30 years old, who had a stroke, interestingly enough, and his left side is paralyzed. But after that, he's come across the spiritual teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda, and especially on the subject matter of sex. And he's feeling a bit guilty. I guess that somehow is involved with sex, isn't it? Guilt. And wanted some counsel, some advice on that. He seems to be associating his stroke with his excessive indulgence in sex, but whether or not that's actually medically true, I'm not qualified to comment. What I'd like to share just a little bit, because the subject of indulgence in sex in this modern age is practically taboo, because East and West, the culture's commitment to sex as the greatest thing on earth, worthy of all sorts of exploration, is so endemic that what can one say? I think of the poor Muslims with their attempt towards modesty and all the brickbats they get, but the worse things get in terms of exposure, if you will, pardon me, the more I think, gee, that's really a good idea. Let's cover up all those attractive young ladies. But to be more moderate, that's really the path that is suggested for those who are on the spiritual path, is moderation. Even in the 19th century, some of the great spiritual teachers in India were already discouraging their devotees, their disciples and students, from adopting the monastic life, the traditional monk and sadhu and so forth. I guess they could see where consciousness was going. And we, certainly in the West anyway, but increasingly everywhere, live in a candy store of self-indulgence, not just sex, but that's what we're talking about here. You don't need to be married anymore. I mean, in my day, growing up, it was axiomatic that if you had a deep need for sex, like St. Paul said, better to marry than burn, then you had to marry. Well, it's no longer the case. Not that it ever really was, but in terms of what's socially acceptable anyway. And so what do we do with such a culture when a person, encounters the traditional teachings of the value and even necessity of celibacy, certainly self-control? What do you do? Well, let's start with moderation. I would teach back when I did a lot of course teaching in the lifestyle of Raja Yoga. I would say, sort of half-jokingly, you have to be present to win. Unlike those game shows or coupon things they used to do years ago that said you didn't have to be present to win, just keep your ticket or something. If you can be present, and I think of Tantra, not the left side Tantra, but the right side, which is an expression of the power of the mind to remain present under all circumstances, the true Tantra teachings. I think of be present, be mindful in everything you do, including your intimate relations and so forth, because there are so many inappropriate relationships these days, hookups and all that kind of thing. But not even that. Sometimes you're cohabitating with someone you don't even like, or has gotten out of control. And if you can be present in your life, practice the presence of God, practice japa, mindfulness, both in meditation but especially in action, and here we're speaking of sexual actions, then your own conscience, nothing puritanical, your own conscience will tell you if you're out of sorts with your higher self. Now, I had a passing thought there and it just escaped me. But practicing the presence will really help you to know what is right and true for you. Lahiri Mahashai, interestingly, in the 19th century, gave a technique from probably the Tantric tradition, which focused a lot on kriyas, on techniques, and so on, said two things. One is, let's say if you're trying to lead a moderate life or even a celibate life and you feel assailed by temptation, those inner demons of fantasy and imagination, or even sexual arousal, is to do deep breathing, whereby you inhale and draw a cool current through the lower part of the body, up the spine, and hold it at the spiritual eye. Just keep inhaling and let it dissipate through the spiritual eye. Another even more a technique, not so much during stages of arousal, but as a meditation practice, is to take a bag of ice with water in it and place it over the genitals, male and female, man or woman, in other words, and hold it there and let the cool feeling, it's a more intensive practice than just using the breath, but let that cool feeling, like when you're on retreat or you're at home privately and let's say in your life you're dealing with some of these issues, let that coolness rise up in self-offering. And of course, with so many images in entertainment, so-called, so much gratuitous violence, gratuitous sexuality that they add nothing to the dramatic plot that might otherwise be redeemable, probably not, but might. What you look at, there you are out in public at an airport or, on the streets, and mind your P's and Q's, watch where your eyes go, and so on. And in the presence of members of the opposite sex or whatever sex that might arouse you, be mindful, be in control, and you look through your spiritual eye to that person's spiritual eye. Don't gaze with abandon. Gaze with delight. Don't linger over images in your mind or images in front of you that are temptations, that are causes for arousal or fantasy. Okay, the moderate path, the path of moderation, the path of having authentic relationship with another person where it involves in sexual activity. Be present and you will win. Okay. Bless you.